without further ado, we are going to get started with our scientist for the day. And I will let Erick introduce himself and tell us a little bit about his career path and the moment that he knew his path was towards becoming a scientist. Go ahead, Erick.
Thank you, AJ. Welcome all of you. Very nice to meet you all. I'm very excited to have this opportunity to chat with you. And you know, when I was asked about when I really realized that I want to, you know, dedicate my entire life to the sciences, I thought that I never thought about it before. So what I can say is that I have this wonderful teacher when I was in my second year in the high school who used to teach chemistry. And I found that chemistry was kind of something that I enjoyed. So while the other guys, my classmates were suffering, I was enjoying that. And I started, you know, asking some more questions. And this person was so nice in guiding me through all this. And then eventually, when I get into the college, I knew that I was looking for something to do with research. And then in my first year of college, I know another of my teachers who gave me the opportunity to work in his lab. So that was, man, over 30 years ago, and I'm still excited every day with finding something new and noticing that I advanced a little bit more on my research. And until today, I'm also always interested in, you know, getting a student, giving the opportunity that I was given in my time to get involved with this. So I always enjoy sharing with, you know, you all and the students. I had high schooler, undergrad student and grad student at my lab working with us, and we have had the opportunity to work together and share the excitement of finding new stuff. So I think that it was non-stop for me since that time in the 85. Thank you, AJ.
Great. And can you just give them a little bit of background about what you do at DRI?
Absolutely. I'm a assistant research professor here at DRI, and my work is related with working on how to prevent that people may, you know, get affected by environmental concerns. So my main area of work is in water treatment and water quality. However, I'm also engaged with other activities related to research, for example, related with climate change and how these can connect with the water quality that we need. And as the case that I will tell you about it, how these can connect with the people's health related with the extreme heat that we may have in Southern Nevada.
Excellent. So speaking of extreme heat in Nevada, especially those of you in Vegas, it's probably hot today, isn't it? Today we're talking about science phenomena because it helps students develop inquiry-based thinking in the classroom. So Erick, can you tell us one phenomena that you study in your work as a scientist and how you got interested in it?
Absolutely. So look, since I moved to live in Las Vegas, and for those of you that live in Las Vegas, I'm pretty sure that you will hear me very clear. And in this case, I start hearing people saying, man, this year the heat is horrible. It is worse than last year. So I start thinking, okay, is this us just complaining, or is for real getting hotter in the Las Vegas area? So I started with this research question just to think about, okay, let's try to figure out if this is something that is happening, or it's just, you know, a perception of the people that you want something to chat with your neighborhood when you see him in the morning saying, man, this is a very hot day. And he would say, yeah, let's get a cold one and then go ahead with your day, right? And in this case, I started collecting information about how the temperatures are in the Las Vegas area, for example, for the last 20 years. and then start to looking at this information to see if there is a trend for real on that. Now, because I started with that part, then once that we figure out that what was the actual trend that we can observe, I start wondering and how this has to do with people's health. Because under these very hot conditions that we may have in the summer, I'm pretty sure that at least if you're exposed to the heat, you may feel not really good, right? And what we did was to start searching for information, and we got a very nice contact with the coroner office in Clark County. And they were so kind in providing information about the number of deaths that were recorded related with extreme heat. So what we did at this moment was to compare how the trend on the temperature has to do with the trend on the number of people that has died because of that. And that was a different approach into this because the final outcome was really surprising, and I will keep this for the grand finale to tell you what was that. But this was, I think, a very nice way to enter into one of these observations for the phenomena and then try to explain it using the scientific method.
Great. So in terms of digging a little deeper, I know you have a PowerPoint presentation you might want to show, but talk a little bit more about the pattern that you study related to this phenomena.
Okay, so what we found was that sometimes you notice how the heat is really high, but eventually the temperature start to be decreasing a little bit because the nature gives us a chance to have a break. And then again goes up, and then probably is kind of a cycle going up and down, up and down. So it's very hard to know, for example, if there is a trend, you know, like it would be easier if the temperature were increasing constantly, but this is not the case. So we need to figure out somehow if this is a trend for real. And that's the kind of analysis that we need to do, just not collecting the information, but also doing some additional research to try to see if this is something that we can demonstrate that the temperature is increasing and not just varying, right? So that is pretty much the kind of thing that we can do. And then, of course, in the case of the number of deaths, it's also related with that. So we need to correlate both and try to see if there is any kind of correlation between the two of it.
And hearing that, students would be pretty engaged with the idea that, wow, does increased heat cause health problems or cause death over time, and looking to see if there's a correlation. So in terms of an investigable, I cannot say that word, in terms of creating an inquiry-based question for students, can you walk us through the systematic observation and how you interpret the data?
Absolutely. Can I show you the
Yes.
PowerPoint presentation, please?
Yes.
Okay. Let me go for it and share it with you. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let me show you. As you know, the population growth in Nevada has been specifically occurring in Clark County. So there are some information that we are the third place in increasing population here in Nevada, or in the entire country. So that is an amazing thing that happened, and this curve that I'm showing you shows how the increase on the population had happened, and you see this is a straight line going up. And of course, there is another very interesting thing, that is a significant amount of retirees are coming to live in Las Vegas. So this is also something that is increasing, okay? But look at this graphic here. So this is the average annual temperature for Las Vegas. And do you see a pattern there? Mm-hmm. I think that is very clear how the temperature is starting about 64. and ended up over 70 in some cases, right? And this is just the average through the year. So if you see from here, it seems like there is a trend and the trend is increasing. And that's what I was trying to explain a few moments ago, that from just watching, that may be a significant trend. And then you can start figuring out what happened, for example, in this case. So what we did was that we collected information coming from different weather stations all around the valley, just as pointed in here, from Nellis Air Force Base, McCarran Airport, Henderson Airport, another station that is in an office nearby, North Las Vegas and North Las Vegas Airport, and then do that combined with, as I said, the Clark County Coroner Office to try to figure out all these two trends. Now, in order to do that, we run one index that is used to estimate the perception of the human body to the heat, which is related with this table that I'm showing here. So it depends on the temperature, but also depends on the humidity. And you have these different colors are for when you need to be cautious or extreme cautious, you are in danger, or in extreme danger, going from these brown to red color. So depending on that, is that you may be experiencing different types of problems for your entire body, and this is related with this. So the two things that you may face in this case after being exposed to extreme heat is heat exhaustion, which is, you know, in some cases you feel dizzy or you feel not really good, or heat stroke, which means that you may lose consciousness and you be in a really bad shape after all. And that's why when you were hitting on these heat stroke, you better call 911. So what we did in this case is start collecting the data, and despite that the graph that I showed you before looks like a trend, look at this mess. So when you see this, honestly, I am not sure if that may serve to say, okay, yes, it's true, it's getting hotter and we are complaining, you know, right? Or never mind, this just look like a lot of dots around there, so we're just exaggerating and nothing to do with these being related with extreme heat increasing in Las Vegas area, right? So in order to do that in a proper way, we use it, for example, in this case, this statistical analysis that is called the Spearman Rule. The Spearman Rule is a way to analyze the data that seems dispersed and try to figure out if there is any way that there is a trend. So what we did for Las Vegas, in this case, for Clark County, in the 2007 to 2016 period was founding that the data on June, July, and August, as you may see on the table, the trend on the temperature is to increase despite that the mess that I showed you in the graph before. So it happens that if you notice that, for example, in the case of, do you remember, like the caution, extreme caution danger and extreme danger, the numbers are going up from caution to extreme caution to get into the danger and eventually an extreme dangers in the area. So let me show you, for example, in this case, this graph shows how the HI, the severe heat is increasing as we move to over the years, and how the number of deaths are also increasing with that. But if this is not enough, let me show you this graph. In this case, I'm showing the annual number of deaths and the average annual heat index that I show you. And look how both are going up and down in this case. But look what happened when we compare with the total number of deaths in the red dots in the bottom and the different scenarios that the heat index provides. So you see, every time that the heat index gets into the very hot, then the peaks on the population or the number of deaths increases also. And then finally, look at this graphic here. So we have, again, the maximum heat index, in one side and the number of deaths in the other. And as you may see, when the heat index goes up, the number of deaths goes up and then down, moving almost at the same. And look what happened at the last year. So we have a peak also in the heat index and a peak on the number of persons that are dying in the area just because of that. So that is really, really concerning. Now, after that, we also did another analysis trying to see, for example, how the duration of the heat waves are coming, which means that the heat waves may stand for a longer period of time. And what we found is that it happens. So there are some numbers moving towards 8 days to 10 days with time. And also about the severity. So how bad is that? And it seems to be increasing. So we are having or experiencing longer periods of heat waves, but not only longer, but also more severe. So we need to be careful about that and take care about it in not being exposed to the heat and try to avoid it as much as possible just by that.
So in being a scientist, you have to ask a lot of questions. And I'm sure you've generated many research questions over the course of your career. What do you think makes a good question? And what are some common errors that you may have made or that scientists make when asking questions?
I think that, well, yes, you're right. We need to wonder about something, and I think that this is not just as a scientist, but just as a person, as a human being, because there are many things that we don't know, right? So in this case, I would say that any question is worth to explore. And perhaps the most important thing or advice that I can give from my experience is that we need to be sure that we use the scientific method to try to answer to those questions. It's very important because some cases you can have a wrong answer and think that it is for real. So you may start going on the wrong direction, and it's something that happens very often. And you need to be aware that you are responding properly. Now, something that happened to many of us in the excitement of doing this kind of job is that you probably want to try too many things at once. And that's complicated, like by more than what you actually can chew. And in this case, I think that that's a very common mistake that we all do, mainly when you're young. Now, nice thing is that gout is a disease that is cured with the age. So as you get older, you start learning how to approach into these, and then, of course, need to advise others coming after you on how to do it. And that's another part of the job that you guys will agree with me that is very, very exciting to guide some others to try to avoid the same mistakes that you did in the past, but also they need to do their own. So in this case, you need to allow them to try, but then you need to guide them in order to get the proper skills and the proper experience to continue doing this. Because science is not something that just one people do. Is all of us are going ahead, and we stand it on the shoulders of people from the past, and there will come new generation who will stand in our shoulders, and that's the way that we build knowledge.
Great. A big part of your job when mentoring future scientists is teaching people how to think. What mentorship advice do you have to help students move from memorizing to asking questions on how to figure something out?
That's a very good question and a tough one to answer. I think that the main challenge for moving from memorizing to thinking is perhaps get them engaged on how wonderful is the creation of knowledge. So when you memorize, you will most likely replicate and go back to bring what other may said, but probably not using that as a way to get your contribution ahead. So once that you move from trying to recall what others have said and try to get your own voice, then you start creating and producing your own. Of course, is a process that takes years and training, and you need to get the proper skills. But I am convinced that the sooner we start, the better. And in this case, I mean, it's wonderful what you guys are doing, working with kids and trying to bring that way of thinking for them since the very beginning.
Oh, you had talked about in what you wrote, you talked a little bit about curiosity, and of course, as teachers, right, we want to spark interest and curiosity, and we want kids to question things. So, can you speak a little bit to that force?
Absolutely. I mean, what I was trying to say is that we all have questions, and we all can notice phenomena happening around you. Some of those may be well known, but some may not. And what I have learned in my career is that if you discourage a child mind saying that, don't ask me this because this is just stupid or silly, the problem may be that they may keep wondering, but may never share their curiosity or their question with others. So we need to build an environment where they feel, comfortable asking questions, and then try to answer in, our best capacity to answer. Now, I also have learned that there is nothing wrong with saying, I don't know, and let me go back to you when I have an answer, or let's try to contact this person to see if she or he may know better, or just don't know. Let's try to figure out something, because when you hit one of these, you're in the right path for starting research, right? Because if you go to a book or Google it and you find the answer, well, that means that probably someone else has been dealing with that part. But when you cannot answer this as easy as we wish, like, okay, let me see, and this is the right answer, then we have hit with a very nice question to be asked, and probably worth to continue searching over that and researching a little bit about it. Actually, for example, related with the example that I gave you, when I start wondering about this idea of checking on the temperature in Las Vegas area, I found that there were no information around it. So I decided to keep going, digging a little bit more, and no one has been doing this research before. And I was amazed, like, man, Las Vegas is really hot in summertime, so why no one is doing this study? So I was amazed, and then keep digging, and I realized that there were no information about it. So I said, okay, I want to answer this question, and ended up in a very nice publication in a scientific journal. So it was amazing.
Great, thank you so much. So next, if you haven't already, if you have questions, you can type them in the chat, and Megan is going to come on and she will call on people to unmute and turn on their video if it's not on, to ask questions, and hopefully Eric can answer them for you. Thanks. Go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, we've had some really great questions, and we'll start off with we're going to start off with two questions that are looking to dig into a little bit what's behind the numbers. And so the first question comes from Ms. Anna Radif. Are you on the line, Anna? If you're there, unmute and you can go ahead and ask your question.
Sorry, yeah, Anna Radiff. I teach at Cashman Middle School here in Vegas. And I was wondering if any of your data included like age ranges, the ages of the people who were affected most by heat-related illnesses, because I would assume that it would be, you know, the elderly or the very young. And I was wondering if you took that into consideration.
Sure. Thank you, Anna, for asking that. Yes, we did. What we did was to get different groups of age. What I can tell you now from what I remember is that we went for less than 20, and then between 20 and 30, 30 and 40, 40 and 15, and then over 50. And what we found is that in the case of Las Vegas, elderly are the population segment with the highest risk. Now, we found that this has been related with people who has precondition like heart diseases or high hypertension. Most of the death certificates are for elderly, I mean, probably over 65, with the heart disease or hypertension. Now, it was also very interesting to find that for young people, let's say less than 30, most of them were related with use of drugs or alcohol, which also makes sense, you know, because when people are using any of these drugs or alcohol, the way that the organism responds to the exposure to extreme heat is different from, you know, other person not intoxicated. So we found that, and I just saved that because I don't want to spend that much time talking, and I prefer you talking, but I will be happy to share with you the study because there is a good amount of findings on that part. Now, just for you to know, related with that, we are now working in a kind of similar work for a project that is funded by NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric, what is that?
Administration.
Administration, thank you, Megan. And in the Southern California part. So we are working in the border between Mexico and the US near to Calexico. And what we have found down there is that elderly is not necessarily the most affected segment of population. In that case is people between 30 and 45, which seems to point at, it seems to be like people working exposed to the heat, the most vulnerable, are different from, for example, a place like Vegas. And just to end with the answer is that I'm now working in trying to figure out, for example, for workers, how hard that could be in Vegas. And it's very interesting to see that, again, this segment between probably 30 and 50 years old is the highest concern in here. But of course, this is the economically active population, so they probably will be. So I'm looking at that now, and I hope that I will have a very nice result to share with you sometime in the future. Thank you very much for your question.
That was an excellent question. There's another question from Teresa Gronick, who asks to go behind the numbers in a little bit more of an intersectional way. Teresa, are you on the line? I'll go ahead and ask Teresa's question. With recent information that COVID is at higher rates in lower socioeconomic classes, would the higher death rates also be seen in lower socioeconomic classes because of education or possible lack of access to air conditioning or swamp coolers? Have you done any investigation of those kind of correlations?
We are trying to do that in the well, thank you very much for asking that. We are trying to do that in the project that I told you in Southern California. So for some reason, and I don't know which this reason may be, I haven't found any funding to continue working in Las Vegas area. Hopefully I will. But what we have been doing lately for Southern California is precisely to look after the economical issues related with all this. So what we have found is that in the case of Southern California, it's not the maximum temperatures which is increasing, but the lower which are increasing, which means that in daytime it's really hot, but the problem is not that, is the nighttime hot, which is affecting most of the people. And that makes sense also because, you know, poor people working outside all day long and then coming home without access to, for example, in this case, AC, will have a really not good night rest. And then next day again, go outside and get exposed to the heat. So after this cycle to be replicated for a few days, you get exhausted. I mean, there's no way that you can continue dealing with that, and then probably will get sick. So there are many ways to try to, you know, go over this problem. But for example, the access to AC may be a very nice one, but sadly, not all the people has the, you know, economical possibility to pay the bill for having an AC. So there is a need also, for example, to get with other, you know, policy measurements like putting laws that may protect the workers from being exposed into the heat. But before we can get into that, we need to let the people know that this is a serious threat for their health. So another thing that we are trying to do now in this project is to estimate the perception of risk. So for example, in this case, now that we're talking about this thing on extreme heat in Las Vegas, I would like to reflect you to think about this. Do you feel like you are in danger? Because that's the first thing that you need to think about it, right? So if you don't feel that you are in danger, you probably won't pay much attention. So you're not in the group of age that may be over 65, but that doesn't mean that you are not in danger. I mean, we did not any work on trying to figure out, for example, what happened with the athletes working out outside and exposed to the heat. So this is another very significant part of the research, and there is no information about that. So people don't know, or we don't know how far they consider themselves in risk. And this is another question that worth to be explored. So yes, that's a very good question, and I think that it worth completely to continue working on that part.
Wonderful. Leon, are you on the line? Do you want to ask your question about geography in the region? Leon Negrin asks, how do the longer, more severe heat waves in Las Vegas compare with other desert areas of the American Southwest? So you touched on this with the region around Calexico. I'm wondering if you can pan out to year scale or larger regional scale.
Right. Yeah, thank you very much. That's a very good question. And what I can say is that it seems like it's happening all around the country. So in everywhere, the heat waves are getting longer and more severe. Independently, I mean, this is just for Las Vegas, but you can do that also for other locations, which may not be considered as hotspots. However, the other thing that we need to consider is that depending on where you live, you acclimatize to different weather conditions. So I don't know, I would like to give you an example in, let's say, Seattle, Washington, which probably is not as hot as it may be Las Vegas or even Reno. But something that for Las Vegas, or for something living in someone living in Las Vegas, may sound like this is nothing, like 90 degrees, which is the actual temperature in Reno, by the way, Megan.
Temperature today?
Uh-huh.
The high was supposed to be 80.
Okay, we have, what is here in Vegas? We are in 102, probably. Okay, so if, 80, that's laughing, right? So this is nothing. However, if you live in Reno and you are, dealing with that thing, it probably will be hard enough for the people living in Reno. And that may apply for the same for different locations. So to give you an example, we are now also doing some analysis for San Diego, which, really? That is like paradise, right? So the hottest that they may go is probably 90 or something like this. However, they feel the affection of the extreme heat also. Because, for example, many people do not used to have an AC in their household. And now, on nighttime, when the heat is on, they are suffering because of that. And they has been affected because of the heat. So it's different depending on the location, but in general, everywhere is getting the same. So we are having long-lasting heat waves, more, how to say that, worse and worse, and that seems to be the trend all around the country and the world, just in some cases related with the global warming, and some others is related with phenomenon, another one that is called the urban heat island, which is related with the increase of the paved surfaces in big cities that capture the heat during the day and release it during the night, so it doesn't allow to the nighttime to be fresher. But either way, is very highly, noticeable that the problem is increasing and increasing and increasing.
Great, thank you. Very helpful. Chrissy, do you want to ask your question about breakdown of resident versus tourist data?
Yes, I asked if the data from the coroner's office were able to show how many residents died versus how many tourists or visitors to Las Vegas died, and who might have been affected most often.
Well, thank you very much for asking that. I'm afraid that the information that we were able to collect did not show that. And the argument for that is because they want to keep the, sensitive information that may not be disclosed. So I totally understand. However, I think that it worth to continue wondering about that, because of course, if you have someone coming from other places not as hot as Vegas, and they decided to, grab a beer and then walk around the strip for a while, they probably will be affected in a major way than, a person living in Vegas, and they may get sick and perhaps, I don't know, being affected that much. However, this information was not available, and I'm afraid that I have no answer to your question. Maybe it will work totally to try to figure out that, but my guess is that in order to get this information, there is a need to sign a non-disclosure agreement and more, paperwork to get it, but I think it's possible. Thank you.
Excellent. We have a question from Christina, and this is, Christina, I know you said that the question was answered, but I'd love for you to ask it again, because Eric may have even more future ideas that he wants to share. So Christina, do you want to come on the line and ask your question?
Sure. So we try and teach our students to build on what they've already learned after they've done an experiment or answered their first question. So what is the next question that you have based on what you've learned from the correlation of heat index and number of deaths?
Thank you for asking that, Christina. And I will try to keep it Sure, because there is a lot. But look, first thing, we did that using the information from the coroner office on the people dead. But I think that it will be very interesting to try to figure out how many people get sick just because of that, right? And this information is not available. So it will be very interesting to know how many of these are experiencing heat strokes or heat exhaustion or any other related with the heat. And then probably in that part, we can include a lot of people coming to visit in Las Vegas, right? Because they may not, be affected that badly that they may be dead after all, but they will probably miss the experience to come in to Las Vegas because they felt really bad for 2 days or so just by being exposed to the extreme heat. So that is a very nice question that we need to ask. The second one is just what I was telling you a few moments ago, that what about the workers? So do you believe that, for example, construction workers, people working on gardening, people being outside during the high temp, how bad is that for them to be exposed, right? We don't know. And there's a need to figure out that, and it will be very interesting to know what is this about. And third, and then I will shut up, I swear, is what about homeless? As you know, homeless are exposed all the time. They have no access to AC. They don't have access to shelter in some occasion. And I'm pretty sure that this information is not available because many of them may not have access to health care facilities, right? And it will be completely worth to try to explore that because we need to save these vulnerable population, try to save as much people to get sick, and of course save people's life by avoiding to be exposed to extreme heat. Here in Las Vegas and any other place, there are many other places that are suffering with this. So Las Vegas is not the only place. And of course, as I was saying before, many other places not as hot as Vegas may also have some trouble. I mean, you probably remember that in the past, there have been some heat waves in France, in Paris, that there were people dying, and probably not because of that much heat. They were probably on the 90s, but still it was too hot for them. So I think that there are many other questions that we can ask, and all of it may work, because if we keep studying these phenomena, we may help to save some life. And if this is the case, man, we are good, right? Thank you.
That's great. Eric, I know you are a solutions-minded person because you have studied engineering and you are looking at some of these problems. So I'm going to take a question that was submitted during the registration. One of the teachers asked, what are the best ways we can adapt to these changes that are occurring?
Thank you, Megan. Yes, absolutely. We found that in the case of Vegas particularly, the trend that I show you in the slides, this increase on the average yearly temperature, doesn't seem to be related that much with climate change. I mean, it's not that highly related with global warming. So when we start digging on that idea, what we found is that it seems to be more related with, do you remember that urban heat island that I mentioned? Well, it seems like this is the cause of the heat getting worse in Las Vegas area. So, and we thought that because, as you know, Las Vegas urban area has grown like crazy in the last, 20, 25 years? So we have a lot of additional paved surfaces, a lot of new buildings and everything. So we found this paper from about 5 years ago where they did the analysis of the urban heat island, and they found that all neighborhoods with less greenery were more susceptible to be hotter than new neighborhoods with a lot of greenery. So that means that we should get more grass and trees and greenery in general to help to try to avoid the heat island effect. But that also has another problem because, as you know, Las Vegas is a place where water is not precisely abundant, right? Actually, the Southern Nevada Water Authority has had this campaign where they ask you to switch from grass to pebbles in your backyard. But if we do that, then we will have hotter surfaces and probably an increase on the heat island effect. So we have like, okay, what we do, which is the best way to do that. And I think that, well, there are many things that we can do, and you probably can help me to think about a few more. But the first is, okay, let's do that, but instead of using grass, we can use, how do you call it, local bushes or plants that may
Native
grow in the
plants, yeah.
desert, right? Second is, we can reuse the water, and that's why I'm dealing with the water quality and water treatment, because the wastewater or the gray water or any other type of water, used water, we can reuse it, treat it, get it clean, and use it to, you know, for irrigation for the grass, so we can grow on the greenery. And of course, we should be able to get, you know, some way to avoid the paved surfaces using something different than the concrete or the what is that they use for paving the streets. So there is work for not just me but many other expertises to deal with that, and the problem is significant. So I believe that we can spend the rest of the day just discussing about that, but I will stop in here and then allow that the conversation continue.
Eric, you listed so many really interesting ideas, and the trade-off between xeriscaping and grass. And if anybody is interested in learning more about green building solutions, about 10 days ago, we actually did a talk with the director of architecture at UNLV who gave a lot of really cool ideas about green building and mentioned the urban heat island. That's on DRI's Facebook page. So if you want to learn more, you can check out that. I'm going to pivot now to a question that touches on one of the last things you said, Eric, which is about water quality. Ms. Flaherty, do you want to ask your question about water quality?
Yes, I would love to. So I teach marine science, and I'm just curious of what type of scientific studies you've done with water quality and how you've related that to possibly a phenomenon that you might have studied.
Well, thank you very much for asking that. This is another of my passions. So I will try to keep it short. We have found that because of the way that the system is built here in Las Vegas, for example, and I'm sorry for the other guys living in other places, but I need to provide with an example in Las Vegas because it's very nice. We get the water from the lake, right? And then we use it, and then it is collected and then treated in the wastewater treatment facilities and then go back to the lake. So the thing is that we are drinking our own pee, and I'm sorry to say that this way, but the pee is the less of the problem. So there are many papers lately saying that we have had hormones, antibiotics, even cannabis derivatives going into the treated wastewater back into the lake, and we're drinking that. And the worst part is that, for example, in the case of female hormones that are being released back into the lake, there are some studies saying that some fish living in the lake has been increasingly affected by the amount of female hormones. So they are now, how do you say that, feminizing? So there are more females than males just because of that. So now I wonder how this kind of thing may affect us and our kids. Now, that being said, I would say that there is a need for solving this problem, and that's my work on that, and I can share with you a good amount of information. For example, developing new treatment processes that can remove that from the treated wastewater. So just recently, we published a paper where we're using a specific methodology to eliminate acetaminophen from the treated wastewater, which works really nice and destroy the acetaminophen, so you have nothing to be concerned about that. And in this case, we use, have you ever heard about something called nanomaterials? Well, nanomaterials are tiny materials so small that if you compare a nanomaterial with a basketball, it's like comparing the size of the basketball with the size of the earth. Now, we use that to develop these processes that can destroy the contaminants using solar radiation, because we want to do it in the more environmentally friendly way. And it works really nice, and that's the work that I have been doing for the last over 20 years. So just to end with this answer for your question is, we are suffering with the contamination of our water everywhere, not just fresh water, but also marine water. And we need to come up with some solutions, because the conventional water treatment processes are not capable to remove these. Another example that comes to my mind is the microplastics. Have you heard about this thing? Plastics, particles so small that are released into the ocean, into the rivers, and we more certainly are drinking it. I just saw this paper in Nature, where some people have found that microplastic moves with the evaporated water into the clouds, and now we have microplastic on rain. That's really scary. So we need to do something about that, because we continue using the plastics. And if you're interested, I will be happy to share with you the research that we are doing in my lab for dealing with the removal or the destroy of microplastic in water. So now I'm going to stop it here.
I would love to have a copy of that research, both with the microplastics and then what's happening with the fish and the feminine hormones. Yes, I would love to be able to. Should I just email you?
Megan, which is the best way to do that?
We could work with you, Eric, to share all the resources. We are going to be sharing a link to a Google Drive with resources related to every single talk. So if there are either papers or research prospectuses that you think would be great to share with the teachers, and get them out to everybody.
Absolutely. I will be happy to share those resources for you to post it. And if you want to contact me, I suppose that they have my email address, right, Megan?
We can share it as well.
Okay, so just send me an email and I can send you the information directly, and we can keep with this conversation as long as needed. I will be happy to do that.
Wonderful. Thank you. We had a few, there were so many great questions. I wish we could have gotten to them all, but we need to start wrapping up because there's a bit of housekeeping, including the raffle. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put a link to a Google form, which is a survey that we'd like you to fill out. I'm going to put that in the chat to everyone. So please open this link in your browser right now and then fill it out when we're done. And then I'm going to ask AJ to come back on so she can share the raffle winners. Let's see if they're online.
All right. All right, so I used Excel and did a random generator. So we have a few winners. So from Brinley Middle School, we have Sam. Sam, are you here? If so, show your face, say hi. You're our first winner. Let's see if he's there. You can see Sam. Our next winner is Michelle from Sierra Vista High School. Yay, there she is. Our next winner is James Miller from Clark High School. James, are you here? I see claps. And then Teresa Gronick from Sparks High School. Yay! I see her and she asked a question. And we also have Jeanette Ogden from Mance Elementary in Nye County.
Hi.
Yay! All right, those are our 5 winners. So at the end of the week, we'll send out all the gift cards, but basically we're giving away 5 gift cards per day, $20 each for Amazon, just for participating. So we really appreciate your time. A few things also that I noticed, I know people have different names on their Zoom than how you guys signed up, and we have to have that accountability piece of attendance. So unless there's a quick way, I know that I can go and change my name. Like I can rename my picture, my name. If you want to do that, great. If not, I created a Google form that you can fill out to tell me what your name is and what your Zoom name was, so I can cross-reference to make sure you get counted for this hour that you spent with us today.
I just sent around the form for correcting the Zoom name. So this is only if your Zoom name was not the name that you want on your PD credit form.
Great. And in terms of resources, we will share out a link for a Google Drive that's going to, there are things in it now, and it will grow over the week as you ask questions and as the scientists may want to include more things in it. So everyone will have access to these folders online for resources. That's awesome. Before we go, I want to thank Dr. Bandala so much for his insights, preparation. There may be, I don't know if you guys want to give sparkles or claps, but show him your appreciation. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. It was very nice to share with you, and I really look forward to continuing in touch with all of you. I will love it. So yeah, let's get going. Thank you.
Great. And if you have feedback for us, we obviously have 4 more scientists coming up this week. If you fill out that survey, there's a place for you to give us some feedback so we can make any changes that we need to in the coming days. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, everyone. One more thing. There was a keep that Zoom form correction open. We're going to correct the back end and then refresh it in about 5 minutes. I'll work with AJ to get that correction. So thank you for letting us know.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.